Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and as always, I am here with my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, happy Halloween. How are you doing?
Happy Halloween. We had trick-or-treaters.
Nice.
So that was fun.
Put on a couple movies in the front yard, it sounded like.
Yep. Projected some movies onto a sheet on the garage, and one of the kids said, "You've got the best decorations in the neighborhood."
Hey, that's a vote of confidence that I would always take. But anyway, we are coming to you now Monday night following the Packers' last night, Sunday night loss to the Buffalo Bills, 27-17. Covered the spread, but it does send the Packers to 3-5 on the season, and we're here to break that all down for you. But first, just to plug a couple of things, come follow us on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We would really appreciate it. It would really help our numbers. From there, we tweet Packers articles that we find interesting, any Packers news items, including injury updates. We tweet about upcoming episodes, new episodes. So just come give us a follow over there. We would really appreciate it. And then on YouTube, Father Son Packers Podcast, if you want to come subscribe. All of the episodes are available there as well. And subscribing to that channel would give us a lot of help with our numbers, and we would really appreciate it. So if you could do those two things, we would really appreciate it. But Dad, are you ready to break down this game?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at this game, see what we think of it, express our thoughts, hopes, dreams, fears, etc.
You know, a little conglomeration of all of them, a witch's brew, if you will, a little Eye of Newton there. Some spooky themed.
Bubble, toil, and trouble.
Yes.
Toil and trouble is basically what we've been going through the last 4 weeks.
Yes, and let's start with our gut checks. But for me, I thought that this was the best they've played in the last 4 weeks. I thought they played better than they had versus the Patriots, Jets, Commanders, or Giants. I know that they lost. They covered the spread, and I know a lot of people are like kind of upset. Like they just like no moral victories. Like the Bills were thoroughly outplaying the Packers. Yes, the Bills are a thoroughly better football team than the Packers, but
right.
The Packers could have folded entirely in the second half. They didn't. They moved the ball a lot better than they had versus some of these other teams. I mean, I don't think many people would argue that the Jets defense is much better than the Bills defense, or even better at all than the Bills defense. And they were able to move the ball much better on the Bills defense than they had the Jets. They looked more competent on offense than they had in weeks. I mean, they lost by less than they did to some of these worst teams previously. To me, if there is such thing as a moral victory, this would be a moral victory to me. It kind of depends on how you choose to look at it as the viewer. This game is a lot of, I think, eye of the beholder stuff. Some people are very much like really down about this loss. Other people are really optimistic of this loss. And I think I land kind of as a gut check somewhere in the middle. They looked better than they had, though. And I think if they had played like this versus those other teams, they would have probably stacked at least 2 more wins. That's kind of my gut check. Dad, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were talking about this earlier, that we felt that if they played this way the last 3 weeks, they would have won at least 2 of those games, possibly all 3. So when you talk about, I guess one of the things, if you want to talk about, moral victories or not, it's kind of what your expectations are. If you're expecting this team to be as good as the Bills, you're going to be disappointed by this game. But if you've already sort of reset your expectations based on recent weeks and how the team has been playing, then I think you can say that moral victories are something, because what we're looking for right now is signs of improvement. This was
Exactly.
a game we're not really, since the chance of us winning this game was so low, what I most wanted to get out of this game was whether or not the team is starting to play better.
Exactly.
And I would say, looking at this game, is they were moving the ball better. You know, the run game for most of the game, and even the passing game showed up at the end.
It was better than it had been. And I know some people, like Packers reporters that content I really enjoy, were saying like, if you had like told, they were looking at it through the lens like, if you had told me before the season started that you would kind of cover a double-digit spread against the Bills and be in there, like they were like, would I be happy? Heck no. And I'm like, well, yeah, But
we're not at the middle of, we're not at the beginning of the season
I was
anymore.
going to say, if I had told you before the season started that you would lose to the Giants, Jets, and Commanders in consecutive weeks, I'd feel a lot worse about that than losing by 10 to the Bills. I mean,
yep.
The expectations at the start of the year, I don't think there's any reason those should be the same expectations right now. There's a chance that by the end of the year they are competing to the level that we hoped they would. But right now, they just need to put something positive on the field because they've lost 3 straight weeks to kind of mediocre to bad teams, in my opinion. I mean, I know the Giants and Jets have really good records, but they have some fatal flaws that should be more easily exploited against top-level competition. And I think losing to the Bills by 10 is the least of their worries after losing 3 straight. I mean, they looked much better this week than they did the past 3-4 weeks. And I mean, right. Bailey Zappi took him to overtime, and the Bears just beat the crap out of him. So,
right, if you look at it, even from the preseason when we were thinking we were going to be contending to lead the NFC by this point in the season, it was not unreasonable to think we could lose this game by 10. Because of all of the factors that were stacked up against us in terms of Bills at home, where we've never won, ever.
Bills off the bye.
Bills off the bye, and the Bills being a really good team.
Yeah.
So
there's a reason the spread was 11 points. There's a reason the spread was 11 points.
So I come away from this game not trying to gauge whether the Packers are playing like they look like they're at the Bills level. I was past that at this point. I'm looking to see, I'm comparing the Packers now to the Packers last week and the Packers 2 weeks ago and the Packers 3 weeks ago and trying to figure out is there any hope for them to get better and better as the season goes on? And I would say, I look at this game and I think, yes, they are screwing up less. They are starting to do more of what we're hoping for. Now we have to see if they can build on this.
Yeah, and I mean,
to get some wins.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you this was a great performance, but it was a better performance than they'd been putting out there. Like, there's at least a direction for this team. They leaned on the run game. They ran the ball well. They played some decent opportunistic defense. They hit a few deep shots, and we're going to get into all of this as we get deeper into the game. But I think that there's definitely some positives to take away from this game. But, Dad, do you want to kind of move into the rest of our breakdown?
Well, I just want to say one more thing about here. If you think about the Bills have been just boat racing teams. And building up leads and crushing them.
Building up leads and keep building those leads. They have been hanging 40 on everyone they play.
And the idea that the Packers' ability to kind of keep it close and serve, as it were, for a while after the Bills got the lead is something that most of the rest of the teams they played have not been able to do.
This is true.
So that's why I don't think it can be completely thrown out, because we've been able to do something against the Bills that most of their opponents have not done.
Yeah,
so
because I know some people have the argument.
Bar low.
Yes, and some people have the argument that the reason the Packers were able to move the ball is that the Bills let up. And like we talked about before we started recording, the Bills haven't let up on anyone else. I mean, they've been hanging 40 on every single other team and scoring at will in the second half, and the Packers held them to 3 points in the second half. It's not nothing. It's not nothing. You can argue about how much it is. Yeah.
But it is something.
Yes.
And so, honestly... And what I take it is, it's something that I think you could say is we're moving in the right direction. That's all. Yes. We're moving in the right direction.
Yes, but anyway, let's get into the rest of this game breakdown. Unfortunately, along with the loss came several injuries, which we're going to break down now. But before the game started, on Friday, Elton Jenkins popped up on the injury report with a foot injury. So not his knee that had been surgically reconstructed, but a foot injury. And that one went
right over my head. I missed that entirely, that his limited there was a new injury.
Yes, and he was able to try to warm up. He was a game-time decision for the game. He tried to warm up for the game, and it did not go well, so he did not play. So Zach Tom started at left guard in his place. It went Bakhtiari at left tackle, Zach Tom at left guard, Josh Myers at center, John Runyon at right guard, and Josh Nyman at right tackle. And turns out, according to Matt LaFleur, Elton got stepped on in practice on Friday, I believe is what he said, and that's why he was unable to go. But so that was one injury that kind of, I think, hampered the Packers to some extent, especially with pass protection, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
Bakhtiari, on the other hand...
I was going to say, just about Jenkins, after learning that it was his foot, I'm less concerned.
Yes.
When I just first heard Sunday morning, he's like, oh, he's out there warming up and is leaving with a trainer. I'm like, holy crap. What's going on? Do you have a setback? This is actually less troublesome than a setback on the knee.
Yeah.
For the rest of the season.
Yeah, and for the rest of his career. Because, you get stepped on your foot, like, yes, it'll hold you out a game or two, but it's not something where, well, knock on wood, obviously, but it's not something where there's a whole lot of long-term concern there. He was able to at least, they thought he might be able to play at least, is something that's there. Yeah. Going down the injury report, Bakhtiari was able to play the entire game. I think this is a big step for him. On the road, after a flight, in the cold, played every snap. I think that's a really good sign for him.
On AstroTurf.
On AstroTurf. Yes, that's another good point. He was able to play the whole game. I think that's really positive injury news for him. Unfortunately, some negatives. Devondre Campbell had to leave with a knee injury, but LaFleur said there's not a whole lot of concern long-term and that it's looking like it's going to be more of a short-term thing. He might miss this week, but at least we might have him back soon. And then Christian Watson, unfortunately, on about the third play of the game, suffered a concussion. Just really tough.
He looked fast on that play, too, and then he got down and hit in the head, and his head was driven to the ground, and his neck was bent, and
it looked worse than it actually ended up being. I know a concussion's very serious, but it looked like he had hurt his neck, and they initially brought the board out for him, but they were able to. He was able to walk off on his own power, at least. I think is the positive there.
Hopes for him to get over this quickly. I saw that. I think even his mom was tweeting about how it looked and how horrible people on Twitter can be.
Yeah, tell me about it. But it looked worse than it ended up being, which is at least a positive. Hopefully he can progress that concussion protocol quickly. And Matt LaFleur did say that he seemed in decent spirits in the locker room after the game and that he talked to him. So mostly positives there. Could have been a lot worse. Preston hurt his shoulder during the game and had to come out.
Pretty
Preston
late.
Smith, that is. Yeah, late in the game, unfortunately. Haven't heard anything more on him since, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that in practice today. Beyond that, Sammy Watkins got looked at on the sideline a little bit. Did you see if he came back in after that?
I don't know. I haven't gone back. I failed to go in through the play-by-play to find out if he came back in after that. He was kind of invisible all game long.
Yeah.
Really?
He just couldn't get open.
Yeah.
Couldn't at all.
He had that one catch early for the first down, and that might have been his only catch of the game, right?
Yeah, I think so. And then, so hopefully he'll be all right, and then we'll keep an eye on that in practice this week. And then A.J. Dillon went down really awkwardly on a almost horse collar tackle, not really a horse collar, but kind of that type of tackle, and his knee really bent up under him.
Got pinned under the tackler as he got bent sideways. That looked a little scary, actually.
And somehow was back in the next series and played the rest of the game. So I know it sounded really bad, but I guess he's okay. I wouldn't be surprised if it hurts a lot more the next day and he's limited this week. But he was able to at least return to the game and put up some decent numbers. Dillon had a pretty good game, I thought. But those are the injury updates. The big ones to keep an eye on going forward are how Watson progresses through concussion, Jenkins, how his foot heals up and if he'll be able to go for this Lions game this coming week, and then Campbell's knee, obviously, and Preston's shoulder. Two big ones. Preston especially because they don't really have a lot of edge depth right now, and then Campbell because he's the green dot. He's usually the one calling plays. And the Packers were without both of their linebackers in this game, which we'll get into.
They had to get McDuffie had the green dot. But he'd played like 8 snaps in his career or something before that on offense.
Buffalo native.
On defense.
Buffalo native Isaac
he got to play in front of his home crowd, as it were.
Yeah.
Hometown.
Anyway, Dad, do you want to get into our more deep dive game breakdown?
Sure. So let's go offense.
Yeah, let's start with the offense. I think let's first start with, because in our pregame we talked about this a little, because our expectation for this game was not for the Packers to win, but there were some things where if the Packers offense had done these certain things, we would feel a little bit better. And so based on the things we had in the pregame, the first one was offensive line communication. We felt like going into this game, if the offensive line could execute better with their quote-unquote new group that they had originally introduced in the Washington game, and if they could pass off stunts and twists better than they had previously, we would feel pretty good about at least the offensive line going forward. And with Tom taking Elton's spot, it is another new offensive line group starting for the Packers again, which not ideal and does set up another problem for that. But Ted, I actually thought that the O-line communication looked pretty good. There weren't too many completely blown assignments, I think, or not as many as there were at the start of the year.
No, a lot less. Maybe there was one. I'd have to maybe go back and look at the all 22, but maybe, and then maybe Buffalo didn't try to stunt and do as much, but I didn't see so many just like two guys going in opposite directions away from one pass rusher so much.
Yeah.
There may have been just one play of that on the right side. I'd have to go back and look.
And
it
beyond that,
definitely improved.
I think so, and I know,
I think we're getting kind of we're on an upswing for offensive line play. I would say from what it was.
Yeah, they
3,
just
4,
need
5
to
weeks ago.
get snaps with the whole group there, and getting Elton back at that guard spot will be helpful, because I know Tom's in a tough spot, but I just don't think he's a guard. I think he's a tackle, which we'll talk about. But that, and then the other thing from the offense that we wanted to see was just kind of tying into that, less mistakes, less shooting themselves in the foot. And I thought they did that again. I thought they did that pretty well. They didn't have nearly as many drops as they did versus Washington.
No, there was like the one from Toure, and I don't know.
And that one was kind of low.
It was a tough catch. I don't know. I didn't remember a lot of their drops, actually. So I thought they cleaned that up a lot better. And
it looked like less miscommunication on how the plays were drawn up, less people running the wrong routes, it seemed like. There were a couple problems with like the 2-minute drill, with guys it taking a while to communicate the play down, but I feel like that's just to be expected.
They had so many new guys out there, but you didn't get all these procedural penalties. There weren't so many holding penalties, which killed like 3 drives last week, and like all of the misalignments. There were still
a decent amount of penalties, but not nearly as many.
It wasn't as bad as last week.
Yeah,
last week was
I think the offense took, based on our goals for this offense, which is mostly just stop making terrible mistakes. I think pretty good. I think they definitely made strides from last week. Beyond that, let's just go into the good things. The offense ran the ball really well this game. Aaron Jones had 20 carries for 143 yards, 7.2 yards per carry. He looked like a Pro Bowler out there. A.J. Dillon had, I think, his best game of the year, 10 carries for 54 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards per carry. Beyond that, they actually stuck with the run, even though they were losing, which is something they almost never do. But they stuck with what was working. I know it kind of is tough because you were down 17 and the clock was running a lot, but they won time of possession because of that, which is like whoop-de-doo. They won time of possession and lost by double digits. But I just like the idea that they stuck with the run even though they were down, which is not something they've always done in the past, even though we've kind of begged them to do it. And the run had a lot of success against a very good run defense. I know you had a little bit to say about the run as well.
Yeah, it was close to a 50-50 split, too, the passing and running. That have to look at game neutral script early on in the game. I think they were running more than they were passing, and they started passing at the end to try to hurry up. But I had that both Jones and Dillon looked really good. I thought Dillon especially seemed to be going a little faster than he had recent weeks, where he seemed to be just kind of hitting a wall. He was able to, and both of them I thought did a lot of work after contact.
Jones it was not always blocked cleanly for them.
No,
they had to make
Dillon
guys miss.
Was getting hit, and he was driving. I remember the one play. It's like, oh, he's hit. It's like, oh wait, he's still going. Oh, he's got it all the way down to only 1 yard left.
Yeah,
from the announcers, they were surprised. They were like calling the play done, and then he gets like another 4 or 5 yards there.
There were 2 or 3 of those
behind Tom, I think, on the left side, and
there
he
were
had
2 or 3
of
those
side
where they had him dead to rights in the backfield, and he ended up with at least 2 yards going forward. And
Right.
I mean, he
And
played well.
Yeah, I think this is more what we saw last year from Dylan, where he had a lot of making his own yards that were not given to him by the offensive line. And so it's nice to see him looking a little bit more like he's on that, maybe getting back to form, what we expected from based on last year's play. And Jones, he was just killing. He looked so fast getting around the corner, and
they had no answers for him. They had no answers for him at
really
all.
Good.
Yeah. Beyond that, some positives for the offense. I thought the young receivers played pretty well. Dobbs had 4 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown. Toure had 1 catch for 37 yards and a touchdown, but it was a really nice off
script
play. And then Amari had 1 catch for 22 yards. It was a really nice catch downfield.
It was a nice contested catch on the left sideline.
And I just think going forward, the young guys just give you a whole lot more than what are these guys not doing that Sammy Watkins is doing, I guess is my question. Because I just didn't. The offense looks so much better with them out there.
I would see more Toure, Dobbs, and even Amari Rodgers than Watkins.
Free Amari. Amari's a good receiver. I stand by it. Free him.
Yeah, when he gets the chance on offense, the last few weeks, he's making plays on offense.
Yeah, he's a minus. He's not a good punt returner. He is not. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you he's a good punt returner.
I think people's opinion of him as a wide receiver are, affected by his struggles as a punt returner.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people on Twitter were saying this, but I'm just going to say it again for anyone who missed it. That Samori Toure off script play, Rodgers is going to love that. Rodgers is going to love that. He is going to get more snaps because of that one play. Because that is exactly what I know a lot of people on Twitter said. That's what Dobbs didn't do last week that Rodgers wanted him to do, where he's coming across, going from right to left. I think it's a deep post, and Rodgers. That's the call is like a rollout going that way, and it just gets blown up. Right. But then Rodgers has to buy time. Toure looks back, realizes Rodgers is coming back the other way, and completely breaks his route off and takes a hard right turn because he sees that Rodgers is going that way too. And that's the kind of play. That's the kind of
right
mental connection that's not there with the rest of these receivers.
He's moving with Rodgers to make the throw easier, and at the same time leaving the defensive back in the dust. By reversing field so quickly.
And that'll get him more plays. And speaking of Rodgers, I actually had him also as a good thing for this game. I thought he looked better than he had since the Bears game, I think. Jacob Morley on Twitter had him at 3 of 5 on deep passes for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns. It actually looked like he could throw the ball downfield in this game, which I wasn't entirely sure. They were able to take a lot more snaps under center. That's the other positive I had for this game. They're actually going under center. The previous 3 games was all shotgun, and for some reason, the only thing they can run out of shotgun is an RPO, and it's just super predictable. But they were actually going under center. They were running play action under center. No, Rodgers doesn't generally like to do that because he doesn't like turning his back to the defense, but it's working, and so they're going to have to stick with it. So my positives are Rodgers. I know he only had 200 passing yards on 30 attempts. I think part of that was just they were just running the ball so well they had to stick with the run. And he didn't have a good game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he had a great game, but it just looked like he was capable of having a good game going forward. He's not totally broken where he can't throw the ball downfield anymore, I guess is what I took out of his performance. And so I know it's kind of like another weak award, but it was encouraging based on how he also,
since you're talking about Rodgers, I also had something about the ball just looked like it had more zip on it when it left his hand this week to me.
Yeah,
on those deep
I know that
balls.
sounds like a total football guy thing. It's like, man, the ball just looked better coming out of his hand. But I mean, it just looked better coming out of his hand.
And I think maybe his thumb is getting better, even though it was taped today. And there's someone was like, does that look swollen? It just, the throw.
He was grabbing at it. He was grabbing at it a lot less than he had been in previous weeks, I think.
And so I'm actually hoping that it's the thumb that's been the problem, because that's a fixable problem as opposed to he's just done. Between those choices, any fan should choose, I hope it's his thumb that's the problem, and that it's going to get better, as opposed to he's just cooked.
Yeah, and
so
I mean, what
I'm
are
on
the
Team
odds?
Thumb, and that Team Thumb is getting better, and that he's starting to throw the ball better. His deep ball was because we've seen how crappy
could not hit the broadside of a barn.
Deep shots were earlier this year. It was like it's had like a couple of just miraculous catches, and that's kind of it. Mm-hmm. The fact Toure is the most wide open they've had somebody downfield, except for the Christian Watson one in game one.
That was before.
That was actually a well thrown ball.
Injury though. Yeah,
that was pre-thumb injury. It was a well thrown ball, and he was open. But
yeah, and just so many fewer balls just in the dirt, like that Washington game and the week before in the Jets. So many balls just
off
in
target
the dirt,
low,
off target low.
There were
couldn't
fewer
hit
of those.
A guy.
There was the one to Toure that you could call a drop because he let it go between his elbows. Didn't quite.
It was low though, but it
that ball was
uncatchable.
That ball was a little low, but there weren't as many of those as there were just a week ago.
Yeah,
where he had a lot of low that were either drops or in the dirt.
All we're looking for is improvement. All we're looking for is improvement.
Nice contested catches by Dobbs and Amari.
Oh man, that first Dobbs touchdown, or the Dobbs touchdown.
That catch was insane.
Woo! Sheesh.
While he's getting his right arm ripped away, he switches it, cradles it with the left, gets the feet down. That was a beautiful catch.
That's
of course,
the
like,
Packers catch.
Why does it have to be so freaking hard? Which the announcer talked about too, and that's why the Toure, where you're able to go off script and find the open space and get the attention, is really nice to see, and hopefully we'll get more of that.
Yeah. Do you have any more positives for the offense?
I have a couple more positives things. Like there's obviously the run game and that we talked about, but also when they needed to, and of course the other team is expecting, they were actually able to get a quick score finally.
Yeah.
On the last touchdown, they were like 3 minutes or something. They were able to move the ball. Which is something I don't know if we've seen much of this year at all. Them actually to just work the ball, quick passes, and get downfield and get the score. And
there was some prevent defense in there, but
there's a little bit of prevent defense in there, but still it was worked well. And
are you gonna tell me that the other teams that were up double digits on us weren't playing prevent defense? Like we weren't scoring on prevent defense in the other weeks, so.
Right, so it actually looked more competent in trying to get downfield quickly when they needed to.
Yeah,
and they got a couple explosive plays. So the touchdown to Toure, I think, is their longest one of the year. And so they had at 37 yards. I forget who I heard say that. And then the one to Dobbs was like 26 yards, I think. So they were to get longer,
more explosive,
more
plays.
Air yards.
Which they need.
Get some explosive, and had some explosive running plays too. Jones had a 32-yarder, and Dillon had a 27-yarder. So they're able to get some more explosive plays, which will hopefully get us out of this grind. The problem with the grind is if you have to do 14 plays in a row with the Packers' current makeup, the chance of one of those going wrong is high when you have to do it 14 good ones in a row.
In the modern NFL, you have to be able to hit shot plays once in a while to be a good offense. More than once in a while. You have to be able to create shot plays and chunk plays in the modern NFL to be a good offense. It's just how it is.
And my last good thing that I wanted to add. Oh, did you have more?
No, go ahead. If you have one more good thing, go ahead.
So I thought DeGuara looked good as a lead blocker.
Oh, DeGuara good.
PFF gave him a bad grade. And this is one I do not agree with.
Yeah, disagree heavily. He looked so good.
I don't know what they were grading because he had a lot of cases where he helped make those running plays happen.
Yeah, I thought DeGuara looked great. I would love to see more DeGuara. I'd love to see him more as a receiver too. I don't know why. And let's start because it wasn't all good on the offense. We
can switch over to the bad things now.
I think we're generally taking a more optimistic view on this game than a lot of people are because it had been so bad the last 3 weeks. But there was definitely it was not all positives for the offense. I have several negatives written down. I would like to see DeGuara used more as a receiver, and I'm going to lead into my negative is why are we calling so many 2 and 3 yard quick passes to guys with no juice or putting them in terrible situations? I know Tunyon is Tunyon's solid, but what is he supposed to do when he catches a ball facing the line of scrimmage 2 yards downfield with a guy sprinting at him at full speed unblocked to tackle him? We ran like 2 or 3 of those.
He's supposed to gain 2 yards is what he's supposed to do on that play.
That would be bad for a run play. That would be considered an unsuccessful run play. I don't understand why these quick like RPO dump offs to Tonyan for 2 yards and he just gets smacked immediately from in the back. I don't know why those are it seems like those are a staple of the offense. And I'm not entirely sure why. Whatever
what I'm hoping?
Whatever happened to these like
up the seam?
No, whatever happened to these plays where tight end comes in motion from across the formation and sometimes blocks the edge, but sometimes fake blocks the edge. Rodgers rolls out and dumps it off, and it's a free 8 to 10 yards. They run a rollout,
especially going to the right side, especially for those tight end plays. I remember a lot of them going to the right side,
and those are the plays where Tonyan was thriving. And for some reason, they haven't. I don't remember one of those in almost this entire year. It's like they never run that anymore.
We were talking about this a little earlier today, about I'd like to see more rollouts. I don't think we've seen very many of them. And maybe once the team feels more confident in the offensive line, we'll get away from all of these. But rollout
should be easier for the offensive line.
And that's one reason why I'm not sure why we haven't been seeing it. So they could criticize the team planning
move
that.
Move the pocket.
But these
make it easier.
These 2 yard dump offs, I'm hoping we cut down on those as there's more confidence in the offensive line.
Yeah, and then some other tough stuff I had. Speaking of the offensive line, I don't think Zach Tom is a guard right now, at least. I don't think he physically weighs enough to handle these bigger interior guys. I mean, Ed Oliver was giving it to him all night long. It felt like he actually was a really solid run blocker, I thought. But in pass protection, I mean, PFF only had him as giving up 2 pressures, a sack, and a hit. But I'll tell you, it felt worse than that. And he just looks so small. I mean, Andy Herman had a really funny joke on the Pack-A-Day this morning that he was like, who looks bigger out there, Zach Tom or Mercedes Lewis? And it's actually a good point because it's kind of close. Because, I mean, Zach Tom, I think he was excellent at tackle. I just don't know. I mean, I just don't think he can really hang at guard. And it's a little, it does sting a little extra that they're playing a guy. So they drafted Sean Ryan in the 3rd, a guard out of UCLA. And they're choosing instead to play a guy they picked after him and at a different position instead of Sean Ryan, who's not even active when they have 2 guards who are normally ahead of him injured. Isn't that something? Like, that's how far down buried Sean Ryan is on the depth chart. That 2 guards are hurt ahead of him. He's still not active, and they're playing a rookie tackle picked after him at guard instead of that's crazy to me.
All we do is just hope he gets better. Like, I mean, Hanson's played, and after his first training camp, I thought there was no chance for him. So maybe Ryan will get better and be able to play in the future, but it's not looking like this year. I had also some stuff on the Pass Pro. Were you done talking about your criticisms of the Pass Pro? Or, I mean, I had kind of similar things about, and there's like a play where I think it was Oliver who just walks Tom right back into Rodgers' lap. Though somebody's also collapsing the pocket from the other side as well at the same time, where he had nowhere to go. And I think several people got beat. They're getting beat up the middle and getting beat off the edges. Though they did do a pretty good job, I felt, against Von Miller. I think Rousseau was getting pressure, and I didn't Boogie Basham. Rousseau got several pressures. I'm not sure if Basham or Von Miller really did that much.
Yeah, I didn't hear Von Miller's name hardly all night, which I think is a testament to how well they at least either game plan for him or how well Bakhtiari and Nyman pass blocked. Because I know Nyman didn't grade out great as a run blocker, but
I saw Nyman getting beat, Tom getting beat, Runyon getting beat. Bakhtiari got beat, Though there may have been one that was nullified by a penalty that I was watching. It's like, oh man, it got beat there. And one of the times that Naimi got beat, the pass rusher, he was complaining about the pass rusher. You look at the play, like, yeah, he took Naimi got it right in the chin.
Yeah, Naimi got some.
Face.
I remember that hands to the face that didn't go called, and it's tough. I thought the refs were kind of tough in this game. They were a little rough. That one in the offensive pass interference against Tunyon, that's the worst one. The exact same play as the Stokes illegal contact from last week. Exact same, except they called it on us this week on offense, and it negated a touchdown that took 4 points off the board for the Packers. So that's tough. Other negatives not related to offensive line. The last one was the drive after the Bills' first touchdown. I mean, we talked about how they did a really good job sticking with the run throughout the game. This was a part where they did not do that. They went pass, pass, pass. First down, they had a flea flicker that just incomplete, deep shot. And what was it? Someone said, you would have bet any amount of money in your bank account that after the Bills scored, they were taking a shot. They're just doing a deep shot downfield, 100% on first down, and it's a guarantee. And I understand the idea. I mean, you're punching above your weight. Like, these guys are better than you, and you're going to have to hit some of those to win. But, I mean, I don't know. It went from that to second down, short pass to Tunyon for 3 yards. The staple of the offense is short dump-offs to Tunyon, and we love it. I love you, Tunyon. It's not your fault, but I just don't like those play calls. And then third down, short pass to Jones for 2 yards. And then the Bills come down and score on the next drive, and you're immediately down 14-0, and you're chasing the rest of the game. That drive, I think, was kind of I don't know about nailing the coffin, but it really set you back.
They were behind the chains the whole. I mean, behind the score the whole rest of the game after that. And here's funny. I had the exact same comment. And one of my bad things was that, that kind of risky play going for a flea flicker, a low probability of working after the Bills, and that essentially started the 3 and out by going for that downfield. And but it's like, did they panic and abandon the plan, which actually worked pretty well. They were able to move the ball, for a while before they got the turnover on downs on their first possession. And the run game was working.
Speaking of turnover on downs, my other negative is the fourth down play calling. The first one, there was pressure, and I mean, it's tough. They went to pass and tried to hit Dobbs on a quick thing, and I think the first read wasn't there, and then he missed it to Dobbs because there was pressure right in his face from Ed Oliver, and it's tough. Just doesn't work sometimes. But the second one, I mean, it's 4th and 1.5 yards, 4th and 2 yards, and there's 10 dudes in the box, and you just run it for -1 yards. I mean, I know we've said before, like, hey, if there's an 8-man box, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't run. But when there's 10 guys up there and there's no one else, I mean, and it's 1.5 yards, it's not like it's like half a yard or a yard. I mean, it was a long 4th and 1. I don't know. I mean, if they pass there, I think we do question it the other way. If they pass there and don't get it, I think we question it the other way. So it is a bit of a tough situation. But
maybe they try to run outside or off tackle or something.
And there's no guarantee it worked. I think it's an interesting. I just thought it's something to point out that I didn't love that decision there.
Yeah, and I think in this game, a lot of what the run blocking is more of a finesse blocking with pin and pull and move in space and
pin and pull is more of a power, but yeah, I think they did run a little more outside zone. It seemed like today,
moving in play rather than just bullying the guy on the other side. That was not what they were doing for run blocking.
Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of all I had for the offense. Did you want to move over to defense?
Let's see. I had for the bad things, like you already mentioned, the hurry-up drill on the last field goal was kind of a mess with a lot of wasted time.
Yeah.
And that Watkins was mostly kind of invisible in this game and just couldn't get open.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the
defense. So the things we wanted to see from the defense, like we said with the offense, going into this game, we wanted to see Campbell and Walker slow down Josh Allen's run game. Unfortunately, Campbell got hurt and Quay Walker got ejected for shoving a member of the Bills practice squad who was not dressed on the sideline for really no reason. You look at the replay and you're like, what are we really doing here? I think he just
lost his cool over. I think he just totally misunderstood what was happening.
Yeah,
as far as I can tell.
Did you watch his post game? Or
I didn't. I heard he was pretty emotional about it, but I didn't
he cut it short
watch it.
He cut it short because he started to cry and he left. But he was very emotional after the game, and he said that he thought the guy shoved him in the back while he was on the ground, and he pushed him back. But you watch the replay, and the guy's just helping him up off the ground, and I don't know. I think it's just one of those things. He let his emotions get the best of him, and he's going to have to learn from it.
Yeah, I think he just didn't realize what the guy was doing.
And even if he did,
yeah, you can't lose your cool.
Don't
Even
do
if the guy
that.
was pushing him.
Yeah.
That was just that's just dumb.
And
if
I mean,
the guy was pushing you, you're going to get the call. You're going to get penalized.
Yeah, and then
I don't think he's going to get.
No, he's not going to get suspended.
They said that maybe they would fine him, but it actually, as it turned out, that it wasn't actually a coach, but a player that he pushed would have probably changed what the call was on the field. But
Maybe.
It doesn't matter. As a 15, because that 15-yard penalty is happening no matter what, which was a terrible thing to take at the time.
Yeah, and then so Josh Allen ended up with 6 carries for 49 yards, including a scramble on 3rd and 14 for a first, which was really backbreaking early. So they didn't really slow down Allen in the run game at all, but they also didn't have either of the starting linebackers.
And Savage didn't slow down Allen's run at all.
We'll get into that. And then the other thing we wanted to see from the defense was don't fall apart in the second half like they had the last 3 weeks. They had completely crumbled in the second half each time. And, this time they held it together in the second half. They got a couple of turnovers, which we'll talk about, and they only gave up 3 points in the second half, I think if that's correct. Yeah, because they won the second half 10-3.
Yeah.
Only gave up 3 points in the second half, and people can be like, hey, the Bills were people are saying, hey, the Bills are sleepwalking out there. Didn't sleepwalk against any of the other teams. And I think the real argument against it is just Josh Allen gave you a couple gifts, one of which was inside the 10-yard line. And that's fair, but sometimes you still got to take advantage of those gifts. You still got to make the plays when those opportunities are given to you. Beyond that, though, I thought the defense was disappointing. I want to start with the bad, if that's all right. And the Quay Walker ejection kind of leads into this. But, man, the Packers' defense is really undisciplined right now. And I think this is like the main thing is just such poor discipline. And it really, I think, stems from coaching. Matt LaFleur was asked today in his press conference very bluntly if he's thought about a change at coordinator. Just straight up asked, have you thought about changing defensive coordinators? And he said, oh, no, not at all. And I think part of that, the reason people are asking is because, I mean, so many penalties on the defense, including like stuff after the play. Quay Walker getting ejected for shoving a Bills player on the sideline, just showing a just complete lack of just discipline and control. Really awful tackling. I mean, we talked about Savage was especially bad today, but the whole team tackled terribly. And I know Josh Allen might be the hardest person to tackle in the National Football League, besides like Derrick Henry maybe. But, I mean, you can't be this bad and be a competitive defense, especially with this many. And then benching Eric Stokes for a few plays for an unclear reason.
To give up a touchdown.
Yeah, just enough time to give up a touchdown, and putting Keyshawn Nixon in, and then putting Stokes back in, and then they asked him after the game why he was benched, and he said, I don't know, you're going to have to ask Matt. So it seems like there's not a clear line of communication as to, he doesn't even know why he got benched, it sounds like. So what is the coaching really doing? Matt LaFleur said they wanted to get a different look out there. I don't really know what that means.
If you were to ask me this season, what's the most disappointing part of this team? Is it Rodgers? Is it the wide receivers? Is it the offensive line? Is it the defense?
It's the defense. It's the secondary.
It's the coaching.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
It's the coaches.
Yeah.
They're the most disappointing part of this team. It's like,
I would put
bad communication, bad tackling,
penalties,
bad penalties,
tons of penalties.
All these things really should come down to coaching. Where
Yes.
they're just making bad mistakes.
And I know something that people are picking.
Now, I don't mean to say that none of those other aspects have been perfect.
I would put
don't.
I would put the secondary firmly in that conversation. I mean, we hyped this secondary up as possibly being the best in the league. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of guys with big contracts, a lot of first-round picks, and they're just really average. They're really
we have
average.
The best 5 secondary in the league. Heard that all summer, all
Yeah.
off season.
It's like these could be the best 3, like top 3 corner, like
Yep.
that
Nobody else has three corners better than us.
And they're just
we have
so
two great
average.
starting safeties. And the only thing we're missing is like a little depth for that third safety and fourth cornerback, which actually those two positions
I was gonna say are actually okay.
have been doing great.
I know
for their positions.
Rudy Ford can tackle at least.
And Keyshawn Nixon.
Is
Those
good.
guys have been playing way above expectation while our top line five have been underperforming.
But yeah, speaking of coaching, I'm out on Joe Barry. He had a pretty good year last year.
I was 4 weeks ago.
Yeah,
5 weeks ago.
He had a pretty good
6
year
weeks
last
ago?
year, and I don't think I don't want to take away that they had a pretty good defense last year. I think it was better than the numbers showed, but he's never had a top 10 defense by any kind of metric. He's never really shown that his defenses are elite at any one thing. The only thing he really gets out of his defense is his really good linebacker play. They're not even really getting that this year.
That was the thing they got last year. He was sort of like is he really the linebacker whisperer? He got, what's his name for the Rams, got paid after
Corey
playing Littleton. And Campbell had the best year of his career.
Yeah.
But it's not as good this year as the whole defense has taken a step back.
Yeah, and I think it's just like I don't know if they are listening to him in that room. Like it doesn't seem like, is there a leader in that room right now, in the defensive room? I mean, these the penalties and the after, like the play stuff, like that just can't happen. You're giving away free yards to a team that's already better than you. And I mean, I know a lot of people for the coaching point to like, why didn't you have Jair on Diggs the whole game? And, I thought Matt LaFleur gave a really good answer to that. And it's really hard to play all man coverage against a quarterback that runs this well, because you end up with 5 guys on the back end turning their back to the line of scrimmage and big old 240-pound Josh Allen barreling downfield with no one watching him.
Already 30 yards downfield before they realize he's there.
And it's a very good point, because you do need to keep your eye on the quarterback and you need to play some more zone. But, I mean, it is really tough when Jair holds Diggs to no catches and then 85 of Stephon Diggs' 109 yards are on Rasul Douglas. I mean, Rasul had a really tough game.
Yeah.
He had the interception, which is nice, but it was kind of thrown right to him. Josh Allen kind of just gave him a gimme, and besides that, Rasul got absolutely toasted out there. I'm done with the Rasul Douglas and the nickel experiment. He is so much better on the boundary. I think you are setting him up for failure, and it's another evidence of bad coaching. I mean, like you said, the coaching has been really disappointing this year, especially on defense. And yeah, I mean, they gave up 5 straight scoring drives at one point. It's just the defense was okay in this one. I mean, if you told me that the Bills only put up 27 points, I do think there's some positives. If you told me the Bills only put up 27 points, I'd be like, dang, good job, defense. And, second half, damn, good job, defense. Like, that's pretty good. But they kind of got ran all over, too. Like, but really,
all I felt, well,
the main positive was the main positive, I think, for the defense was they had 2 turnovers, and they actually had a lot of pressures. But go ahead and go with your...
I should get into my negatives as well. You had about the scoring drives, and the other, and Douglas having a rough game. I had the same thing about the 5 straight scoring drives. I felt like they got beat up in the run game, but really that's that first TD drive where it was almost all running.
Yeah, Singletary was going for like 8 a pop.
And I think there was a 30-yarder in there.
Yeah.
It's one long run. But that was also...
It's the tackling.
That was like half of all of his Singletary's running yards.
Yeah.
Almost half of it was in that first drive. But
James
there were times
Cook ran for a bunch. James Cook ran for a bunch later.
James Cook got open as well, and Allen. Yeah. And there were times where like the safety failed to come in and fill.
But it's just those running plays to me were just bad tackling. I mean, Savage has him met in the hole and just stops his feet. You can't stop your feet in the hole. He got completely juked out of the shoes.
had one where he stopped his feet too. Maybe that wasn't a running play, but
I think
he
it was
also
an
came to
Allen
a stop
scramble.
and just got beat. Yeah, and I had also the bad tackling by Savage, and not only that, but he also
do you want
on the long 53-yarder to Diggs that set up the last-second field goal in the first half. He kind of gets juked. He gets spun around by Diggs as Diggs changes direction to come over for the help.
Do you want to talk about Savage? Let's take a second to talk about Savage.
Sure.
I know a lot of people whose like opinions about the Packers I respect. Justin Mosqueda, Andy Herman, a few other people have said it's Rudy Ford time. Is it Rudy Ford time?
I'm not against it.
I'm not either. And a lot of people are, because they picked up Savage's fifth-year option, which will be fully guaranteed next year.
Yeah, I was surprised when they did that after the year he had last year.
I was fine with it, but I was wrong.
I didn't think he had done enough last year to merit the fifth-year option.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked him coming out of Maryland. I was so high on him. He was one of my guys.
Yeah, and then I was really high on him after 2020.
He's just hasn't gotten any better.
I think he's gotten
worse. Yeah, he just can't. He forgot how to tackle. He can't tackle anymore. Someone asked if who's a better tackler, him or Haha, and I don't know. I couldn't tell you. They're both bad. Like he went with the chicken wing on Josh Allen. Like tried to just hit him with his elbow and completely whiffed. Like didn't wrap up at all.
Whiffed, right? Because he didn't try to. He wasn't like trying to center target him. So he's like going on one side to try to hit him with one shoulder. And because he had already kind of favored one side, it made it easy to whiff entirely.
Yeah, I mean,
on that tackling, that was bad. And of course, that's like I think almost memeable already. I think people have been tweeting that play so much.
If they can find a way to trade him by tomorrow and get out of that fifth-year option, they should, because it's not a good investment at this point.
I don't think there's going to be a
taker
downgrade in play.
Oh yes, I agree.
Rudy Ford is playing instead of Savage.
Rudy Ford will present other issues. I don't think he will be as good in coverage, but at least he will tackle. And it's hard to have a good defense when your safeties can't tackle. I mean,
yeah.
Anything else on the bad side you want to touch on?
I did, actually. So I had one thing I wanted to mention, because one thing that, and we haven't talked about it yet, was that they actually had a pretty decent pressure rate.
Yes.
But they really had no sacks from the defensive front.
I mean,
there was
Josh
one
Allen
sack the only two sacks, but they weren't really getting a hand on him much. I think he was actually pretty clean in the pocket.
Yeah.
There are people sometimes is getting closing it around him, but they didn't really get any hits on him to knock him down. The two sacks was one by Rasul Douglas as he's breaking out of the pocket, and he basically tackles him for a 0-yard sack. I hate that. I hate that it's a sack when it's 0 yards.
We'll take those.
And Wilson just happened to be there when Allen ran out of bounds in their hurry-up offense at the end of the half for a 2-yard loss. And so that was our other sack. Those are our two sacks. They're barely sacks at all.
Yeah.
They're out on the edge. They're not in the pocket. He's really not getting hit. And so they're having trouble finishing. And you're getting some pressure, but they're not getting enough sacks out of it. And Gary, actually, I felt was kind of invisible this game.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree, because PFF had him at 7 pressures. Didn't really feel like it, did it?
It was not very noticeable, because I don't think you didn't feel like it really affected Allen's play too much. But Preston was a much more impactful player of this game.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a testament to Josh Allen that it didn't really affect him that much. I mean, Josh Allen's a superstar. Like, it kind of is what it is in some aspects. I mean, he was shrugging off 250-pound dudes and just throwing missiles still throughout the game. I mean, he's kind of that guy. But yeah. Do you have any other negatives, or you want to take that?
That was it for my negatives. Let's go on. Let's go talk. Let's get a little bit of that good thing taste in the mouth here as we get near the end.
And like we said, I think that if you told me going into this game that they'd only give up 27 points, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. They only gave up 3 points in the second half. That's excellent. I know a lot of people are like, oh, the Bills weren't trying. I mean, they were trying against all the other teams in the second half, and the Packers forced 2 turnovers. Jair had a really good game. He was targeted 5 times for no catches, including a pick and 3 pass breakups. Completely locked down Gabe Davis for most of the game. That was according to PFF, those numbers were. He had an excellent game. I think PFF had him in like a 90.6, which is like a super elite grade. He was awesome. It's great to see him have a bit of a bounce back game after struggling last week.
After giving up some plays last week. I had the same thing where he just shut down Davis and had a great game.
And overall, they only gave up 3 points, and they didn't have either of their starting linebackers for most of the game. So, it's not that bad. It's just like I just think the coaching is an issue, and some of the players are an issue. But really, like, if you look at this game as a whole, this was not that bad of a performance by the defense. Like we said, they had 17 pressures on Josh Allen. It didn't really affect him that much.
Might have been his highest. You're right. So
it didn't affect him that much because he's
highest pressure
that good
rate
against
this
pressure
year that he's received. Right?
Yeah,
did they say that?
I can't remember, but he's just that good against pressure. I think it's just more of a testament to him that he still played that well. But the Packers D-line at least got some pressure. Like I said, only gave up 3 in the second half. Those are my main positives. And the 2 picks for Jair and Douglas, it was nice for them to make. They actually made plays. The defense made plays. Yeah.
Yep. And so what we can hope is that continuing to get a high pressure rate will lead to more impact on the offense of other teams and other quarterbacks.
Yeah,
that they didn't, even if you feel like they weren't able to affect Allen as much. That is going to be more impactful in other games if they are able to maintain it, which is, another thing we're just hoping for, things to keep improving.
Yeah. Do you have anything more positive for the defense?
I did have one more for the defense. I thought it was Preston did a really nice job setting the edge, and I thought both he and Enagbare
Enagbare had a really nice game.
Get tackles for loss. And I thought Enagbare had another nice game. He's really stringing together a nice series of games as a rookie. I think he's continuing to improve and is really basically just taken over that third edge rusher by a mile now. He is the dude as third edge rusher. And he had a nice tackle for a loss. Preston had a nice tackle for a loss, and thought they're doing better and better there.
Yeah. And anything else for the defense, or you want to move to special teams?
That was you had mentioned, I think we had also overlapping things for the good things on defense like we did on offense. And so that was everything I had.
Okay. For special teams, Jack Coco really struggled, I think, is the big thing for me. He had 3 really bad snaps, and in that case, Pat O'Donnell played very well because he was able to handle 2 of them quite well. But the third one was not, and they missed the kick because of it. Jack Coco was kind of all over the place in this game. He had 3 really bad snaps, actually. Like, they were way inside on, or Pat O'Donnell's opposite hip almost every single snap. It was really bad.
Yeah, so that and that bad snap and kind of throwing off the timing of that last field goal attempt basically ended the game. Like, okay, admittedly tiny chance, but it's more than 0. After that field goal, it's zero. It's infinitely more than 0. Infinitely as many times as much as 0.
Infinitely times as much, not infinitely more.
And so infinitely times as much as 0. So we went from a tiny chance to absolutely none.
Yeah, and they stuck with Amari back at punt returner, even though they tried out Toure at punt returner pregame. I mean, I wouldn't have done it, but Amari was fine today.
He didn't have any bobbles or miscues.
Yeah, and then Keyshawn Nixon had a really awesome kick return for 50 yards, which is nice.
Brought back for a penalty, unfortunately. Yeah. I was like, oh, yes, we're getting momentum. Oh, no, we're all the way back at this. Instead of the 50, we're at the 8.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
But we did drive, and I think we scored a touchdown on that drive.
We still got the touchdown off
I was going to say, still got 92 yards. So, did it really matter?
Yeah. But the other bad was, so the Bills ended up with their first 2 touchdowns were essentially short fields. There was the turnover on downs, so they only had to go 60-some yards. And then their second touchdown drive, they managed to get a 17-yard punt return, despite the fact that the ball bounced and is rolling. And we couldn't get the coverage there in time to stop a 17-yard punt return to basically get it to the 50-yard line. So they had to get a 51-yard drive for that second touchdown. So that kind of hurt.
And you can't give the Bills a short field. I mean, their offense is prolific enough as it is. You can't help them at all.
Yeah, there's a big difference between starting at your 30 instead of the 49.
Yeah, I mean, I think the special team's still better than it was last year, but let's move on to our closing thoughts. We're getting a little long on time here. Dad, player of the game?
So I had Jones on offense and Jair on defense. It's kind of obvious.
I had Jones on offense and I had Jair on defense too.
They both. Jones just looks so electric out there. Like it's by far their best weapon in the game right now.
Yeah, it's so obviously the offense
was the lockdown. Jair was the lockdown corner that we've been hoping for this year.
Yeah.
Basically, he put whoever he was covering on a milk carton.
Yeah, it's just it feels like the offense just goes as Aaron Jones goes, and I mean I feel like beyond this week, if they play like they did versus the Bills this week, they should have a good shot at beating the Lions next week. And hopefully they can carry over the rushing attack from this week and maybe some of the opportunistic defense from the second half of this game into games going forward, I guess is my main takeaway.
Yeah. And for me, and we actually talked a lot about it before, what I was looking for was not necessarily a win, but for the Packers to play better than they had. And I would say I got what I wanted from that perspective.
In that.
And so from that, not everything. I didn't get everything I wanted. I got something I wanted. And so I'm hoping that they'll be able to continue on this trajectory and now string together some wins. You have the Lions, who have struggled. They can put up points, but their D is bad. And then they have a couple of home games against tough teams. Will the improvement carry over
steal a
into
couple
those
wins.
home games?
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for now, to get better and stack some wins together.
Exactly. And you can follow along with us. We will be doing a pregame on Thursday for this Lions pod, for this Lions game, so come on and listen. Like we said before, come follow us on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. Come subscribe to us on YouTube, Father Son Packers Podcasts. We hope you enjoyed this postgame, and we hope you enjoy future pregames and postgames with us. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.